You took everything from us!
Chika, what are you saying?
Don't act innocent! Everywhere we go, it is always Amaka this, Amaka that. Men looked at us first because of our beauty, but somehow they always chose you.
I swear to you, I never took anything from you.
Shut up! That is how you fooled everybody all this time. Pretending to be kind, pretending to be innocent.
If it's the prince who wants, I will leave him. But please spare me. It's too late, Amaka. Chika, please.
The water was dark. Paujuku had fished the Oji stream for 30 years. He knew its moods, its calm morning face, its angry face after rain, the way it turned black in the deep middle where the current ran fastest and the bottom could not be seen. He knew where it was safe and where it was not. He hit the water without thinking about any of that. He went under twice before his hands found her. She was not fighting for survival anymore. That was the thing that turned his blood cold. She was not fighting. She moved through the water the way a cloth moves, loose and without will, her wrapper billowing around her, her hair spread out like black roots searching for soil. He grabbed her arm and pulled. He was old. His shoulders had not done this kind of walk in years, but he pulled with everything he had, his whole body shaking, his feet finding the muddy riverbed, pushing upward until they broke the surface together, and he was dragging her toward the bank, gasping, his lungs burning. He got her onto the red clay of the bank and turned her on her side. She coughed. Water came out of her, a lot of it. She coughed again, her whole body convulsing, and then she went still. And he pressed his ear to her back and heard the thin, shallow sound of breath. She was alive. He sat back on his heels in the mud, soaked and shaking, and looked up at the bridge above him. It was empty. The girls were gone. Up on the road above, 3 sets of feet were moving fast through the evening bush. Nobody spoke. Chisom was crying, silently, her hand pressed over her mouth, tears running between her fingers. Her legs kept moving because the rest of her had stopped walking. Chioma stared straight ahead. Her face had gone the color of ash. She did not look at Chika. She did not look at anything. She looked at the space directly in front of her and put one foot in front of the other and tried not to think about the sound. The sound of Amaka hitting the water. The sound of her screaming. Chika walked fastest. Her head was up. Her jaw was set. She was breathing hard, but she was not crying. Not yet. She was thinking. When they reached the junction where the roads split toward their different compounds, she stopped and turned to face them. "We went to the bridge," she said. Her voice was low and controlled. "We had groundnuts and chin-chin. Amaka said she was going to walk by the stream alone, so we waited for her, but when she didn't return, we decided to come home thinking that maybe she had gone home herself. That is all we know, and that is all we tell anyone that asks anything." Chika, Chioma said. Her voice was hollow. "What if she—" "We don't know anything," Chika said. "That is the truth. We don't know anything." She looked at both of them for one long moment, then she walked away. Paujuku did not take her to Umuoka. He had lived alone in his hut by the river for 11 years since his wife died and his children moved to the city, and the silence of the water became his only company. The hut was small, 1 room, a cooking fire outside, a mat, a wooden stool, jars of herbs his late wife had always kept. It was not much, but it was dry and it was safe, and no one would look for her here. He carried her on his back the long way around, avoiding the main road, moving through the bush paths he knew the way he knew his own breathing. She was barely conscious. She burned with fever before he even got her inside. For the first 3 days, he did not sleep. He boiled fever leaves and poured the steam over her face. He pressed wet cloth to her forehead. He talked to her in a low voice when she was restless. Not because she could hear him, but because silence felt like giving up. He prayed in the old way, quietly, his eyes open. On the fourth day, the fever broke. She opened her eyes and looked at him, and he leaned forward and asked gently, "What is your name, my daughter?" She stared at him. Nothing. Not confusion, not searching, just nothing. Like a clay pot that had been emptied completely. "Do you know where you are from?" he asked. She looked at the ceiling of his hut. Her eyes moved slowly, without recognition, without fear even. Just a deep, blank emptiness that was somehow worse than tears. She shook her head. Paujuku sat back and closed his eyes for a moment. Then he got up and went to make her something to eat. Back in Umwaka, the world came apart. It started the morning after, when Amaka did not come home. Her mother went to Chika's compound first thing. Chika met her at the entrance, her eyes already red, already wet. "Mama Amaka," she said, and her voice broke exactly the right way. "We were at the bridge together. She said she wanted to walk by the stream alone. I thought she had gone home. I thought..." She pressed her mouth to her mouth. "I have been up all night worrying." Amaka's mother did not even finish listening before she started running out of the compound to search for her daughter. The search lasted 4 days. Every able man in Umoka walked the banks of the OG stream. They called her name until their voices gave out. They searched the bush on both sides of the bridge. They dragged parts of the river with ropes. They found nothing. On the 5th day, a village elder came to Amaka's father's compound and spoke in the quiet, careful way of a man delivering something no father should have to receive.
"I have terrible news, my son. Something has happened to Amaka."
No, it can't be.
When the elder left, he put his face in his hands. He did not make a sound. He just sat there with his face in his hands for a very long time. Inside the house, Amaka's mother had stopped eating. Prince Chike came to the compound on the 2nd day of searching. He came back every day after that. He sat with her father. He organized search parties. He sent his own attendants up and down the river. When people told him to rest, he looked at them like they had lost their mind. By the 2nd week, he had grown thin. His attendants watched him with careful eyes. He stopped eating full meals. He sat at the bridge in the evenings and looked at the water, and no one who saw him sitting there felt comfortable interrupting whatever he was doing. He was not waiting. He was not hoping. He was just sitting with the weight of it. The way you sit with something that has no resolution yet, holding it in both hands, not knowing what to do with it, unable to put it down. At night, alone, he let himself think about her. Not the version of her the village talked about, the girl who drowned, the missing girl, the sad story. He thought about her, the sound of her voice when she laughed, the way she had guided that old woman across the stones without once looking to see if anyone was watching. The steadiness in her eyes the day he had visited her father's compound and she had appeared in the doorway and looked at him with that open, unguarded expression, like she was not performing anything for anyone. He had fallen in love with her in pieces. And grief, he discovered, walked the same way, in pieces. Each one at a time, each one worse than the last. Chika moved very carefully. She did not rush. Rushing would be a mistake, and Chika did not make mistakes when something important was at stake. She mourned publicly and completely. She wore colors that said grief. She cried at the right moments, in front of Amaka's mother, in front of the village women, in front of the prince. Her crying was not small. It was the kind of crying that made other people want to comfort her, that made them say, "You loved her so much and you must be devastated." She let them say it. She received their comfort with a bowed head and said, "She was my sister. I will never stop missing her." After 3 weeks, she began to appear near Prince Chike in the way that water appears in low places, quietly, naturally, like it had always been there. She brought food to his attendants. She spoke gently to his mother when the queen came to check on him. She sat near him at village gatherings, not pressing, not performing, just present, warm, available. She knew better than to reach for him directly, so she waited. She just placed herself in his orbit and she let time do the rest. Chisom could not eat. It started the second day. Her mother thought she was sick and made her pepper soup. Chisom sat in front of it and looked at the steam rising and thought about the sound the water had made. She pushed the soup aside. After a week, the not eating became something else. She would eat because her body demanded it, and then her body would reject it. She knelt over the bush behind their compound every morning. Her mother took her to the herbalist. The herbalist gave her bitter herbs and said it was her stomach. It was not her stomach. At night, she lay on her mat and stared at nothing and replayed the bridge over and over. Not just the ending, but all of it. The food they had brought, the way Amaka had smiled when she saw it. You did this for me. The orange, the laughter. Amaka had no idea. That was the thing that broke Chisom most completely in the deep hours of the night when there was no performance to give and no one to see her face. Amaka had no idea. She had walked to that bridge with her heart open and her feet light, and she had sat with them and eaten their food and laughed their laugh, and she had no idea. Chisom pressed her face into her mat and made sounds she could not let anyone hear. Chioma stopped flinching eventually. That was the worst part, that she stopped flinching. In the first days, every loud sound made her spin around. Every time someone said Amaka's name in the village, she felt it like a finger pressing a bruise. She could not look Amaka's mother in the eye. But then, slowly, the flinching lessened. The sharp edges of it dulled. She still could not sleep well. She still sometimes heard the scream at unexpected moments while washing her face, grinding pepper, walking past the junction near the bridge. But the raw animal horror of the first week they drowned Amaka faded into something she could carry without collapsing. She told herself this meant she was coping. She did not let herself think about what it actually meant. Months passed. Prince Chike kept searching in the ways that a man keeps searching when he knows in his bones that searching is no longer useful but cannot find a way to stop. He sent word to neighboring villages. He asked traders who passed through Muoka if they had seen a young woman, 21 years old, a certain height, a certain face, but no one ever saw her. The village began to say the river had taken her. The elders prayed for her spirit. Her mother recovered her body from grief by slow degrees. She began to eat again, to move through the compound again, to answer when spoken to. But she was not the woman she had been before. Something behind her eyes had gone out. Her father carved her name into the bark of the big Iroko tree at the edge of their compound and said nothing about it to anyone. Chika watched all of this and kept her face exactly right. 6 months after Amaka had disappeared, Chika decided it was time she took what she believed was rightfully hers. One evening, she sat beside Prince Chike on the low wall outside the palace, where he often went to think. They had been sitting in silence for a while. She had learned that he did not always want to talk, and that sitting with his silence was a kind of intimacy he permitted more easily than words. She would want you to breathe again, Chika said softly. She did not look at him when she said it. She looked at the sky. He did not answer for a long time. When he did, his voice was quiet and completely flat. Do not tell me what she would want. He got up and went inside. Chika sat alone on the wall and breathed slowly through her nose. She was not discouraged. She reached for his hand sometimes, and he did not always pull away. Not because he felt anything when she touched him, but because pulling away required energy he did not have anymore. She told herself it was progress. He sat at the bridge less often now. That too, she told herself, was him beginning to forget about Amaka. She did not allow herself to understand that the stillness spreading through him was not healing. It was a man learning to move with a wound he no longer expected to close. But she vowed she would win him over to herself no matter what it took. 8 months after the bridge rescue, Paojuku's daughter came to visit. She brought her 2 children, and the children were noisy and bright in the way of children who came to see their grandpa, and their presence filled the small space with a warmth that Paojuku had not felt in years.
Amaka, who still couldn't remember anything, even her own name, sat outside on the low bench while the children played nearby. She had settled into a quiet life there, helping Paojuku with cooking and cleaning and mending his nets, learning the rhythms of the riverbank, becoming slowly human again in all the small ways. She did not know who she was, but she knew what she liked. The sound of the water in the mornings, the smell of firewood, the way the light came through the trees at 4 in the afternoon. She was not happy exactly, but she was present. She existed, which was more than she had done in those first terrible weeks. Paojuku's daughter was kind to her. She did not ask too many questions. She called her Ne and left it at that. It was on the second evening of Paojuku's daughter's visit that it happened. Paojuku's daughter had put her children to sleep inside and come back out to sit with the old man and Amaka in the cooling air. She began to hum a song, just idly, something to fill the comfortable silence. Then the hum became words, low and absent, the way people sing when they are not really thinking about what they were singing. It was an Amaka harvest song. One of the old ones, the kind sung at festival time, the kind that every child in that village learned from their mother's lap before they could fully stand. Amaka went very still in hearing the song. Then her hands, resting loosely on her knees, began to shake. The humming continued. Paojuku's daughter had not noticed. And inside Amaka, something that had been locked for 8 months began to move. Not gently, not slowly. It moved the way water moves when a dam breaks, all at once, without warning, without mercy. Her mother's voice, singing that same song. In a compound she could suddenly see. The red dust of her father's compound, the Iroko tree, the sound of a wooden mortar, the smell of evening soup from her mother's kitchen, and her father's cough from inside the house. Everything began flooding back into her memory. Umoka, she shouted. Amaka, she shouted again. Her name was Amaka. And then the rest of it came, not in pieces, not softly. It came like a fist. The bridge, the food laid out on the cloth, Chika's face rearranging itself from warmth into something else, the accusations, the cold water. Chika. She left the bench before she knew she was moving. She walked 3 steps into the dark yard, and then her knees gave way, and she went down into the red duct, and the sound that came out of her did not sound like a person. It sounded like something structural, something deep and load-bearing that had been holding everything up, finally giving way. Paojuku was beside her in seconds. He did not speak. He put his arms around her and held her, and she cried until she had nothing left, and he held her through all of it, his old hand steady on her back, his breathing slow and even. When the crying finished, she sat in the dirt and stared at the ground. I remember, she said. Her voice was wrecked. I remember everything. Paojuku looked at her for a long time. He said, I know. I have been waiting. She told him everything over the next 2 days. Not at once. It came out in pieces, in the middle of meals and in the middle of nights, and once very suddenly while she was mending a net and had to set it down and press her hands flat on her thighs until the shaking stopped. Paojuku listened to all of it. He did not react with fire. He was too old for fire. He listened the way the river listens, receiving everything, holding it, and showing nothing on the surface. When she finished, he told her his own piece of the story. He knew King Ezeudu, Not as a subject knows a king, but as a young man knows another young man he grew up beside, traveled beside, argued with and laughed with, and watched take the weight of a throne. They had lost contact over the years, over the distances and the different directions their lives had pulled them, but the connection was real and it was old, and old connections, Paojuku said, are not cancelled by silence. I can take you back to your village, he said, not as a ghost, not as a rumor, as a witness that saw everything, as the truth. Amaka looked at the river. She was quiet for a while. She had thought in those first hours after her memory returned that what she wanted was for Chika to suffer. She had felt it, a hot, dark thing in her chest, sharp-edged and setting. But sitting with Paojuku in the days that followed, letting the feeling move through her rather than driving it, something clarified. She did not want destruction. She wanted truth. She wanted her parents to stop grieving. She wanted the village to know what happened. She wanted to stand in front of the people who had thrown her away and remain standing, not because she was hard, but because she was still here. She was not the same girl who had walked to that bridge with an orange in her hand. That girl was gone. The one who had come out of the river and out of 8 months of silence was something more. Still kind, still herself at the core, but without the naivety that made her easy to destroy. She had survived. She had rebuilt herself out of nothing. She knew what she was made of now, in a way that girl on the bridge had never needed to know. Paojuku watched the change in her with the quiet satisfaction of someone who had seen it coming. They planned carefully. They waited for the right moment. The New Yam Festival in Amaka was 3 weeks away. That was when they would strike. 3 weeks later, Amaka stood at the door of Paojuku's hut in the early morning. She was dressed simply, a clean wrapper, her hair neat, no ornament. She looked like herself, exactly and only herself. She looked in the direction of Umoka, the way you look at something you have not seen in a long time and are not afraid of anymore. Behind her, Paojuku put on his good agbada, the one he had worn to the king's coronation many years ago. He straightened it slowly, with the deliberate care of a man preparing for something that matters. Back in Umoka, the festival drums were already starting, and inside the village, at this very moment, Prince Chike was standing before his mirror in the palace, preparing to walk out and announce before the whole of Umoka the name of the woman he had chosen to move forward with. Chika, on her part, was already dressed, waiting to parade herself gracefully beside the prince as her new bride. Her dreams of marrying the prince was finally becoming a reality, or so she thought.